recording. Great. Okay. So I'm really excited to welcome you to this webinar. Let's see, let me just pull up my notes. Really excited to have BCA co-founder and vice president Bruce Edgerly, Edge, here tonight. And then we also have risk management expert and mountain guide Jim Conway, or Sarge. Both are longtime Avalanche educators, and they have a wealth of experience to share with us. And BCA recently released an excellent video on performing beacon searches with more than one rescuer. So these guys are here to continue this conversation tonight. And then at the end of the session, they'll also be answering questions about BCA products, including, I think, Ed, you said the Tracker 4 was one potentially that you wanted to chat about. So we're really grateful to have you both here. And as always, grateful for BCA's support. So Bruce and Jim, over to you.
Great. All right. Now, do we have enough? Do we have so many participants that we can't take questions in person? Are we going to have a chat?
I think we can have a chat. Yeah, I think I can give people speaking privileges, which sounds more austere than it is, but I think I can grant people microphone access so they can verbally ask you questions.
Cool. So you can have a real Q&A.
That's right. Yep.
Right on. All right. Well, I'm Bruce Edgerly, vice president and co-founder of Backcountry Access. Probably met a bunch of you guys. Sarge, Jim Conway, is my co-presenter, and Sarge and I know each other from way back in 1994, where we were the two oldest competitors at the US Extreme Skiing Championships. So I've gone on and started a company that makes snow safety equipment and backcountry ski touring stuff. And Sarge has gone on with a very fruitful career as an athlete. You know, he's in the TGR Hall of Fame, and he also has guided forever up in Alaska for Valdez Heli Ski Guides and many others. He was the director of operations there. He's been the lead guide for Teton Gravity Research for 10 years. Whenever they do their film shoots, he's the guy calling the shots regarding safety. I'm sure that's a challenging position. And now he's a consultant to several heli ski operators around the country, around North America, and he has his own heli ski operation called Tordrillo North up in Alaska. And Sarge, if you want to chime in, go for it.
No, I'm good. I just want to, Ed's being a little humble. I mean, it was his initiative in starting the whole digital beacon revolution that pretty much changed our world and made rescue a lot more feasible. Back in the day, it was pretty challenging. You had to practice a lot. Didn't mean you couldn't get good at it, but it was a lot more work. And true skill was pretty much reserved for the pros who were practicing all the time. So my hat's off to Edge and the whole team at BCA for moving the ball forward significantly. They were the first company with digital beacons, and then since then they've gone on to innovate in the beacon area and a number of other areas as well. So I feel privileged to sit here with Edge now and work on these projects and move the ball even further down the court.
Yeah, so Jim's probably the most engaged Avalanche professional I've encountered over the years, which is one reason why he's one of our ambassadors at BCA. He really kind of is very passionate about rescue. He teaches AVSAR courses, he teaches ARI, he teaches AAI, everything. And so, yeah, what he said about the whole digital beacon revolution, I guess that's related to what we're going to talk about tonight. You know, we've seen, we're still seeing vestiges of the analog beacon days. You know, people are still teaching going into analog mode, for instance, in a complicated multiple burial search and doing micro search strips, which is a great skill to learn. What we're talking about tonight is kind of an alternative to that. We're saying, well, if you're in a guiding exam, for instance, you know, you're going to you're going to have to know how to find 4 victims all in 7 minutes without without turning off any transceivers. Every guide should know how to do that. But does every recreationalist have to know how to find 4 people? The answer probably would be no. If you have the luxury of finding 4 people all on your own, that assumes that you've got people digging up those 4 victims or digging up each victim as you go. But in the digital beacon era, most people are pretty decent at finding at least 1 signal. So our position is, why not get those people involved right off the bat with the beacon search by lining them up across the debris pile and searching in parallel as a group? So that's what we're talking about tonight. Just a little history between BCA and ARI. We were one of the first sponsors of ARI. We've been on board ever since day 1 with Jean Pavillard and Murph. We're stoked on how we've grown together. And yes, our product line has evolved since then. If you stick around, if you can hang on till the end of this thing, we can talk about the products. But I probably should show you, if you haven't seen it, that's Tracker 4, which is our newest transceiver. We have this year some new shovels, a whole new line of shovels that we actually haven't shipped yet because of the supply chain crisis you've been hearing about. But this is, we think, the lightest aluminum extendable shovel made. We're calling them the Dozer line. And yeah, they all have this really cool, what we call ovo-concave shaft, which is like a lacrosse stick. So it's got a great grip on it. So when you have a heavy load, it's not going to spin out of your hand. It has what we call a stomp edge. So when you're stomping on the shovel, it's a nice flat crenulated surface. So you're not going to slip off or wreck your boots. You'll see the front third of the blade is smooth for clean columns. So you're doing snow stability tests. And we have a full lineup of T grips, D grips, hoe modes, and everything. We'll show you the rest later if you're interested. You know, as you know, in addition to products, we're involved in education. We feel like if we're going to sell products, really that should be done in the context of staying out of avalanches in the first place and only using the products if you have to. So we like to support all of our products with educational content and offerings. And this year, you'll see that on our website, we have a ton of educational videos, and new this year, we decided to put together this group searching video. And I kind of explained to you the genesis of it is, you know, we've been through a lot of trainings and we see a lot of guides, and there's so much emphasis on one person searching for 4 people. In our ambassador trainings that we have every year, we teach everything. We teach searching for 1, 2, 3, 4, and a random number of victims. But what we found is that if you do a group search and you have 4 people lined up trying to find those 4 victims, we'll cut the search time in half or more. So has anybody seen the group searching video that we used to have out on YouTube? It was a little bit odd. We filmed it over in Europe with an Austrian search and rescue team. Let's see. I suppose you could click on raise your hand and I would see that, wouldn't I? Jim Conway, good. You've seen it. Yeah, well, this is basically a riff on that. So it's nothing new, and it's been in owner's manuals forever, but we just don't see it getting taught. So we would encourage you guys to teach group searching in your next course. All right. What are the key points in this video? What we're going to do is we'll have Sarge just summarize the video real quick, and then we'll just play the video. If it works, if we have enough bandwidth at Jim's house, and then maybe we'll do some Q&A. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'm good. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, first, a little context for this. There's a continuum. Edge talked about one edge of the spectrum where you've got the single expert searcher, and everybody else is running behind with shovels and probes to assist. But basically, you have one person using expert skills to find multiple victims. On the other end of the spectrum is what we're proposing here, what we're teaching here. And like Ed said, it's not new. It's been around for a while. But searching in parallel, where you have multiple searchers looking for multiple victims or a single victim, and acting in coordination to cut down search and the eventual rescue times. There's also things that are in between. If you have enough bodies, maybe you have, for example, you have 4 people with their beacons up front, and maybe you assign another person or a couple of people to follow around with shovels and probes to assist as well. But I just think it's important for everybody to understand that we're presenting you another tool in your rescue toolkit in terms of the parallel search technique. And we're going to kind of teach the pure parallel search technique where you've pretty much got everybody in their own lane searching for a victim. But be aware, there's also hybrids of this, all the way from the single rescuer up to multiple rescuers with an assistant, through multiple rescuers taking care of their own lane. So another piece of context for this, there's more research going to be done on this. Edge and I have plans for a paper to come up in the future here on this, but right now I'd say the context for this is the kind of avalanches that recreational users are likely to encounter. So small to medium, so D1 through maybe small D3, maybe D3 size. And you'll see that in the video if you haven't seen that already, the size we're dealing with. This technique could also work in the context of a larger avalanche, but I think we're going to limit this now to what is we're more likely to encounter as professionals, and our students are likely to encounter as recreationalists. This technique also would require, a number of capable transceiver searchers in a group too. Like, you're not going to take somebody who just got his beacon for Christmas and put them on the front line in a group search. So there is a certain premise here that everybody who you're going to put up front on a lane has, a certain capability with the transceiver. Doesn't mean they need to be a super expert with all their special functions and everything, but they do need to be capable of doing a single victim search on their own. And then also the concept of lane discipline, we talk about this, you'll see in the video, is important to this. Just remember that applies to when we have multiple victims. If you have a single victim, and everybody starts going to the one signal, like kids soccer, which is something we try to avoid when there are multiple victims. In the case of a single victim, that's not such a bad thing, as long as a few people remember, like, oh, maybe I ought to get my shovel and probe out and just let the one guy continue with the beacon. So a lot of what you're going to see here, the context is, medium to small to medium sized avalanches, capable transceiver searchers, and multiple victims. The next concept we're going to talk about, which has come up since we released this, is, what's the lane size? I mean, right now we use a max lane size of 40 meters, and that's based on the 20-meter radius that we assume is sort of like the worst case scenario. Maybe bad orientation, weak batteries, an old drifting beacon. The industry has pretty much agreed that 20 meter is the effective range, no matter what your published range is. There's some people out there in the world like saying, well, if my beacon says it's good to 30, I should search 30. Well, I'm going to let you guys decide that, but the 20 meter effective range has been an industry standard for quite a while now, and I see no reason to abandon it at this point. So that would equate to a maximum lane width of 40 meters, 20 meters on either side of you. So what about, otherwise, how do we do this? I mean, I think there's a certain practical limit. I mean, search and rescue might seem good down to lanes as small as 5 meters where they have a lot of bodies or something. I think for us that 10-meter lane width might be something to look at practically. But in any case, how do you figure it out? It's basically the width of the debris divided by the number of searchers. So for instance, I have a 60-meter wide debris pile and I have 4 searchers. Those are 15-meter lanes, which means that each searcher is going to be 30 meters apart, and the guys on the end are going to be 15 meters from the edge. Okay, so that's 60 meters, 4 searchers. What if I have 60-meter wide and 6 searchers? Then it's going to be 10-meter lanes. So the searchers are going to be 20 meters apart in their lanes, and the guys on the end are going to be 10 meters from the edge. So just keep that in mind. In all likelihood, you're not going to have a group larger than 5 or 6 anyway for most touring parties or even teaching scenarios. So that there's a practical limit there. But just remember these lane widths, like you'll see in the video, the size of the Avalanche ended up being like 10-meter lanes. That's an adjustable number. It's gonna be somewhere between probably 5 and 40. Okay, based on the width of your debris and the number of searchers. What we really get into on this though, everybody's got a certain skill set with their beacon. You know how to, zero in and do the find search and find the lowest reading to start your probe, your pinpoint search. You know how to use your directional arrows. Maybe you know how to signal suppress or use special functions. Maybe you know how to use your special search techniques like 3-circle method or micro search strip. Those are all very technical skills. They're actually fairly, with the right practice, they're all attainable for most people with any level of dedication to the sport. What we're kind of bringing into the picture now is a new skill set that we're all aware of, but maybe we don't get to practice enough, is leading. So becoming proficient with a single beacon, that's an achievable goal with today's technology and the ease of practice logistics. It's pretty easy to go to a training center and do a multiple beacon search as a single rescuer. A lot of patrols or professional organizations will put out multiple beacons for their teams to go out and practice on. But it's fairly simple to logistics because you set the course once and people can just go out one at a time and practice it at basically as their schedule permits. The problem with leading, however, it's hard to organize. It's hard to get a group of people together. So if you're on a patrol, perchance, that means 4 or 5 people are going to have to pull off the line and go do this practice. And so obviously the logistics are harder. And I think that's one reason we haven't maybe emphasized it enough or practice this skill enough. Because I get patrollers all the time and they love to practice this, and they'll admit they don't get enough practice at leading a group search. So that's sort of an underlying thing we're talking about here, and really learning to lead these things. You would think it's a hard skill and we're all intimidated by it. That's just human nature. But what I found in teaching a lot of these is human beings are actually pretty good at this stuff. And also you don't have to organize the perfect search. As long as there's some competent level of leadership, stuff seems to get worked out pretty well, and these rescues go pretty good, these scenarios. So it's definitely a case of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to leading. But getting out there and practicing the skill is important, because one thing is you might be in a situation where you're short on bodies and you might have to wear 2 hats. You might have to be leading and have a beacon in your hand. And I guarantee you're going to want to have practice at just leading before you're ever presented with that. Now, I would say in a real scenario, if you can avoid that, you're going to have a better rescue. If you have enough bodies to have a dedicated leader, that is the best way to go. But if there's only 3 searchers, you're not going to stand back and just lead without helping out. So be aware of that. Again, this is another tool set to add your skills. I think this leadership thing is important. And another underlying skill that we talk about in here that I would like to make a more standardized is concise communications. You see it all the time, people out there and doing group drills, and then I got signal 45, 43, 41, 39, 37, and you got a guy next to him yelling at 23, 21. You know, if you're a leader or you're trying to get an idea in your head what's going on there, is that going to be easy when everybody's just shouting out numbers at such small intervals? You know, no. So, you know, we're recommending, and you'll see it in the video here, is, you know, I got a signal 45, 30, 20, 10. I'm fine searching, probing. Got a strike 1.5 meters or whatever it is. Found the victim's foot. Victim uncovered. He's A&O ×4, breathing, complains of pain in the left knee. You know, that's all that really needs to be communicated back to the leader. If you do that, the leader can stay at that 30,000 foot level. Because remember, the leader is ensuring lane discipline. He's reallocating resources. So like if he sees one person is done with their lane is clear, he can move that person to go help somebody in another lane. He's calling and updating outside resources, all those things. So the leader needs to have that big picture. He doesn't need to know you're reading every 2 meters. So in this video, you'll see how we kind of really hit on that as well. So I think that's all I got. Are we ready to go to the video, Edge, or do you have something you want to add in?
Yeah, you know, just to follow up on the difficulty of opportunities to lead searches, we're launching a little effort this year to make those opportunities available to people. So we're going to have a skeletal series of what we're calling Practice is Faster group search scenarios set up at the backcountry base camps that Backcountry Magazine is doing at Targhee, Alta, and Loveland Basin. And then we're inviting you guys, if you want to host a group search practice in your area, then we will support that and maybe send somebody down there to help out. It'll be good for us because, you know, we're working on a paper. We might even want to do some timed scenarios this year to compare this to, you know, one person searching for 4 people as an example. So anyways, the more experience we can get, the better. And the only way to do that is to do a ton of practice sessions with people. So the big challenge is finding venues to do that and finding co-hosts to do it with. So if anybody here is interested, send me an email, edge@backcountryaccess.com. Hit it, Sarge.
Okay. You see that?
I see a black, yes.
Hi, Bruce Edgerly here. You can call me Edge. I'm here today with Jim Conway. You can call him Sarge. We're here to talk about group searching. What's group searching? It's basically more than one person searching for one or more victims. And why is it important? Well, it's really important for you to practice searching with the group that you go riding with in the backcountry. The thing about recreational groups is that usually in the digital transceiver era, people are pretty good at finding at least one victim. So take advantage of that. Rather than one person doing all the transceiver searching and everybody else following, like you might see in a guiding scenario, for instance, all the people should be searching with their transceivers simultaneously rather than consecutively, one victim after the other. So that'll save you time and will simplify the process.
Okay, so somebody in your group yells out Avalanche. First thing to do is make sure everybody in the group is in a safe spot. When they're in that safe spot, they got eyes on the victim. We're trying to find a last seen point. When the dust settles from the avalanche, it's important to appoint a leader. That leader is going to be critical through the whole rescue process. Leader's next step is going to get somebody calling for help. Next thing leader's going to do is make sure everybody is in search mode. Nothing messes up a search more than a rogue signal during a rescue. Okay, so now your group leader is going to organize your group for the search. What he's going to do is spread everybody out into lanes. The lanes are going to be anywhere from as little as 5 meters all the way up to 40 meters maximum. When we've got everybody spread out, these are going to start the search. You're going to move down the hill. You're going to try and stay close to each other. This helps the leaders see what's going on. You're going to maintain your lane width, and you're going to keep going until you get a signal. We always talk about searching downhill, but that's not always the case. We could be searching uphill. We could be searching sideways. This technique works no matter what direction you're going. The key thing is establishing lanes and sticking to them. Okay, so now as a team member, your leader's got you lined out. You're in your lane. You're working your lane. You're going to continue down till you get a signal. At this point, you want to call out to the leader. Hey, signal, 45 meters. Okay, that's all he needs to know for now. You're going to continue down. Give him a reading like about every 10 meters. So 30, 20, 10. Okay, that's the kind of information the leader needs, but not too much information. So when we break off our lane discipline is when we get a number that is equal to or less than our lane width. At that point, we use the direction lights on our transceiver to get in close to the victim. Okay, so now I've got the low reading. You're going to start probing. Yell up to the leader, probing. Let him know what's going on. You get a strike. Yell out, strike. Give him the depth, 1.5 meters, whatever it is. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to shovel the guy out. Leader's probably going to reallocate resources to come help you shovel. If not, get started on your own. It's also possible that one person might get a signal and he might want to go straight to probing and shoveling. When he does that, the other team members need to spread out a little further to move down the rest of the search area. Okay, one thing you can do that helps move things along quicker is when you get that low reading with your beacon, take advantage of the advanced capabilities. Look down on the BCA. Are you seeing the brackets that indicate another beacon close? You have big picture mode. Press that, see if there's another one. Let that group leader know, hey, I've got one close to me here. He can reallocate resources to get another searcher in there that can really shortcut the time of that rescue. So now you or your team have excavated the victim. Maybe you've got a foot, you're digging towards the head. Call out, let the leader know. Victim found. Then the next most important thing is get that guy going, get an airway going, assess his basic condition, get that information up to the leader as quickly as you can. Okay, while one of the team members is dealing with what's going on in his lane, the same thing's going on in each lane with the same procedures. Important thing in here is the communication, proper amount of communication back to the leader. The leader's job is mostly to maintain the integrity of the lanes. It's to look for patterns so we can, keep people from doing kids soccer on the same beacon. And finally, to allocate resources. He can tell if one lane's clear. You get to the end of your lane, yell lane clear, let the leader know. Then he has another resource he can allocate to somebody else who has found a victim. So if you're searching for just a single victim, you want to continue in your lanes until a signal is obtained. The leader should then assign one person to continue with the beacon search using the directional capabilities of the transceiver. The leader should then instruct the rest of the team to get ready with probes and shovels. Due to the increasing traffic these days in the backcountry, it's not a bad idea if you have the manpower to clear the path. And by that we mean you search the remaining area of the debris pile to make sure there's not someone else buried in there from maybe another party. Another thing to watch out for is the rogue signal. This is when somebody unintentionally enters the search area in transmit mode. This is going to ruin the most well-organized search effort. So, rule of thumb on that is everybody who enters that scene is guilty until proven innocent. It's up to the leader to double check, make sure that guy is either off or in search mode. You may be in a situation where you have more people than you need. We obviously don't want to throw too many people out front with beacons if we don't need to. If you have extra bodies, have them ready to go in reserve with shovels and probes that the leader can now designate as people start to get signals. Okay, as a team member, think of what's going to be usable to the leader. If everybody's calling out their numbers every 2 meters, like 53, 51, 49, 47, and there's 4 or 5 people doing it all at once, is any leader anywhere going to be able to process all that information? No. So what really makes this work is an effective leader. A leader leads. A leader does not have his face in his beacon. I don't know anybody in the world who can process what's going on in the beacon and a group of 4 or 5 searchers at the same time. So if you're going to lead, you have to lead.
Now that we've talked about group searching, the next step is to go out and practice with the group you ride with in the backcountry. There's really no substitute for stepping up and trying to be the leader. So go out and get that experience. And I think you're going to find that communication skills when you're group searching are just as important as your transceiver skills. For more education, go to backcountryaccess.com/learn.
Okay, we're back.
Do we have anybody left or did everybody bail out? Good. All right. It looks like we have some good participation. Does anybody have any questions?
Folks, if you want to just hit raise hand. Okay, perfect. I also somehow, I'll call on you in just a second, Joshua, but somehow all of the attendees have my name. I have no idea how I could possibly have done that. I assume that there are not 6 other Emma Walkers here. So if you see that your name is Emma Walker, please just feel free to raise your hand or drop something in the chat and I'll call on you and you can identify yourself by your actual name. Okay, Joshua, I'm going to give you speaking privileges. Okay, here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Sweet. Hey, so one of the comments I had to what you said, Jim, was about concise communication. And I guess I agree with that 100%. And I think it's extremely important to have concise communication, especially in a stressful moment. But I guess one of the questions I had was for Edge. I was going to see if you could talk briefly about the Tracker 4 and some of the functionality, I guess extra functionalities that are available, like big picture and those sort of things.
Sure. Yeah. So really, Tracker 4 is a combination of Tracker 2 and Tracker 3. I know the math doesn't work. 2 plus 3 normally equals 5. But the functionality actually is very similar to Tracker 3 and Tracker S. But when we discontinued Tracker 2, we almost had a revolution. We almost had an insurrection. Because we had so many patrols and guiding operations using Tracker 2 because they loved its robust industrial design, the kind of the way it'll bounce off the floor when you drop it, and the loud, bright, clear display. So we took those industrial design aspects and combined them with the Tracker 3's sophisticated electronics, and that's Tracker 4. So, you know, some of the more sophisticated features of Tracker 4, which we also have on Tracker 3 and Tracker S, are big picture mode and signal suppression. Big picture mode is kind of the digital version of analog mode. Basically, in regular search mode, any tracker is going to show you the strongest signal. The way to see the other signals is to go into big picture mode by pressing the options button and holding it down, and then all the other signals will show up. So you'll see the other distances and directions. It's really just a temporary mode. So that's why we require you to hold the button down. We don't want you to search in big picture. We just want you to use it for so-called mental mapping. So you can just get an idea of what the scenario is. And we found that Yes, we still teach micro search strips, and we love to do those searches. And what we do is we'll do the micro search strips in regular search mode, like you would with any other transceiver, and search just based on signal strength instead of marking. This is in very complicated scenarios where marking sometimes won't work. Good idea to practice this, but what we do is every time we find a beacon based on signal strength, when we go around in micro search strips and we find a signal because it's the closest one, before we move on, we'll go into big picture mode to see if there are any right next door, like stacked on top of each other, or within a few meters, within that search strip. Actually, if we're doing 5-meter search strips, we'll go into big picture every time we find a victim and see if there's another victim within that 5-meter search strip. So it's super handy for that. Go ahead.
Just some instructors' perspective, I'm sure the other instructors here have noticed this too, but there's a big difference between BCA and some of the other brands, in that BCA is a signal strength based unit. That means you don't have to go into any special function to do your micro search strip or your 3-circle mode, or to do your daily beacon check. A lot of these other beacons, and I'm not going to get into the virtues of one over the other, let's just say they're different. As an instructor, like just doing the daily group check, you have to know how to put those, any beacon that has marking, you have to know how to put it into group search or group check mode just to do your daily trailhead check. You also have to know how to go into the special modes to do the 3-circle or the micro search strip, because those beacons like to lock off on a beacon that they acquire, maybe it has a favorable orientation or whatever, but it doesn't like to let go of that one until you found it and marked it. That doesn't work when you're trying to do a micro search strip or a 3-circle, and it also doesn't work when you're trying to do the trailhead check. So just be aware. And again, I'm not passing judgment on one over the other. All beacons have their advantages and disadvantages. But just be aware that it's kind of some extra homework you got to do. Is I've had to learn how the moots and the peeps and all those work, so I can just even teach the trailhead check these days.
Yeah, that's because we have what we call real-time signal strength locking and unlocking. So, if you get away from the closest signal, as soon as you get more than halfway to the next one, it's going to switch over to the next strongest signal very quickly. So that's what we call real-time signal strength locking and unlocking. So you can't walk past a signal like we've seen happen in too many guiding exams with other units.
And indeed, that's why most guides now just go to a grid. You have a video on that, Edge. They pretty much do a grid now instead of relying on their directional, because of that. Because you have the potentiality of walking past something, and when you're on a clock and it's a relatively small area, you don't want to have to backtrack.
Yeah, if anybody here is going to be taking a guiding exam in the next year or so, I would suggest checking our video called How to Pass a Guiding Exam or a Guiding Beacon Exam.
Yeah, it's a little easier in the US. The AAA standard, I believe ARI does it the same, but it's you have to find 2 beacons in 7 minutes, but they're buried. And they're usually buried at least 2 feet deep. So it's a test of not only your beacon skills, but how you manage your kit. And, it's a little different than the Canadian system. Again, I don't know if one's better than the other, but they are definitely different.
Yeah, in the Canadian system, you're not actually allowed to use marking. They want you to prove that you can find all 4 of those people if your marking fails. And the more victims that are buried, the more likely your marking function is to fail because of overlapping signals. And if anybody has questions about that, we can answer those too.
It's just a good time to bring up a point that I just went through in the last AFSAR I just taught last week. is we're all in the habit of practicing and not turning off the beacons we found. We either use our suppression or our marking, or we go to special search modes. And the reality is we've got to forget, always take the simplest solution. And if you find a body, or if in a scenario where there's no restriction, like, well, you know, our AFSAR class last week, they had to find 9 victims, 7 of which had beacons, and a lot of them were turning them off. And you got a guy who's got a beacon that's out of the ground and he's marking it. And I'm like, dude, just turn it off. Just turn it the F off, you know? So I think we practice so much not turning it off that it's so ingrained in our heads that we sometimes forget when it's real, like, hey, the simplest thing would be to just turn this thing off. Now, I think I would hope in a real scenario, we'd all remember to do that, but I've seen it so much in practice in real type scenarios that I'm like concerned that we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot with ingrained in our practice methods.
Great point. Yeah, totally fundamental. Everything else is gravy, you know. Yeah, we're talking about boutique scenarios here. Scenarios where you have manpower. Yeah, if you could turn the beacon off, just do it. All right, who else? Thanks, Josh. Good to hear from you.
Hey, no worries. I hope, hopefully I'll see you guys at the Extremes reunion.
Oh, I need to get back to her about that.
I'm a snowboarder. I can't do that anymore.
Good idea. Okay, I'll get back to Lotzi tomorrow. All right, do we have some more questions?
Yeah, feel free to drop those in the chat or raise your hand. It's at the bottom of your screen if you don't see it. All right, who do we have on the line? Oh, it looks like you are muted.
Okay, there it's Gary Osteen.
Great.
And yeah, so when we're teaching that group search right there, you had a person, I assume he picked up signals, but he's staying in his lane, just being the discipline all the way, going all the way to the bottom. And because he didn't have anything within 10 meters either side, and he's leaving that for the people in the other lane.
That's right.
That's where the leader would assign, like, that's why I say when you get to the end of your lane, if you're clear, and I learned this from a group of SEALs I was training last year, they're very good communicators, and they would finish their lane, they'd yell up right away, the leader, lane clear. And then that allows the leader, like, okay, I've got a resource, a single resource, that's what we would call it in search and rescue as well. And then you have the ability to reassign them to another task.
Okay. And then also in the beacon, in the video, you don't see anybody saying, I have 3 victims, I have 3 people buried, or 3 readings on my beacon. You just stick with your path, and even though another lane might have more than one.
Well, you know, if there's, generally speaking, most transceivers are just going to show you the strongest signal, and then they'll have some icons that will
Right.
they'll come up, and you'll have an idea of how many there are. The thing is, that's not actually very reliable. You've probably noticed that sometimes it'll, if there's 2 buried, for instance, sometimes it'll say 1. And if there's 3 buried, sometimes it'll say 2 or 1.
Right.
And sometimes it'll say 4. And that's because sooner or later, their signals are going to be overlapping with each other. And when that happens, it looks like there's 1 instead of 2.
Okay.
Because they've synced up for a little while. And likewise, and also noise sometimes comes into play. And you'll see that even when there's no signal, sometimes there will be an icon on your screen. Have you seen that before?
Right. And when we're teaching people in the classes, it varies a lot, and it takes a lot of time to disappear or come back, and it's a little confusing.
Yeah, and that's why Well, that's why on the trackers, we don't even try to tell you if there's more than 3. We'll tell you there's 2, and we'll tell you if there's 2 plus, but after that, no transceiver is reliable.
Okay,
So that's why we don't want to lie to you.
right.
Who are we talking to again?
My name's Gary Osteen. I'm out of Steamboat Springs.
Oh, hey, Gary. Gary, so your question also brings up the point about sort of the baseline skill set we're trying to put forward here is leadership. So like you said, so maybe there's more than one in a lane, but another person might have finished their lane, and if they had proper lane discipline, they got nothing. Here's a case where the leader, like maybe one person got a signal up high in their lane, and they've got a lot of lane left that has not been searched. If I, as a leader, see one person finish their lane, I'm going to go, hey, why don't you go over to Jack's lane and work your way up towards Jack and see what you can find in there. And this is what I mean about leadership skills, because a lot of leadership skills is having the bandwidth to make those on-call decisions. Like, okay, you know what? Jack stepped way up high in his lane. We got a whole lot of lane left to search. I've got a resource available. Let's put them on helping Jack in his lane. Again, the practicing leadership, and again, and like I said, in teaching this, I'm actually surprised how well people do at this. Even recreationalists, after half a day of this kind of training, they actually get pretty good at this stuff. The key is not overwhelming the leader, so that he can have that big picture view to figure out a solution for each individual scenario.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, and the leadership was real key to me after last time. You know, I taught last weekend, and I'm saying assign a leader, and the guy is leading, but he's not leading anything. They assign the leader, and it's like giving that guy the more responsibility to step in and manage the group a little bit.
I would say when teaching it, I do agree with some of the stuff Manuel has noticed on teaching. I forget what he calls it, but it's where, you know, sometimes you give the students the information and you let them go, and you even let them stumble sometimes. I think especially like on the first time you are teaching this leadership skill, I'll walk right next to the leader. And if it turns into a cluster, I'll just say, stop, you know, everybody freeze, and we'll give them some real-time feedback. Like, hey, what do you got going on over here? Why, you know, and make them think. And allow them to develop those skills, because it can get overwhelming at times. I think that's a good spot for the instructor to step in and go, okay, everybody freeze. Let's let the leader have a learnable moment here, and you know, kind of catch his breath and figure out what he wants to do next.
Right. Thank you.
Keep your eyes out for Craig Hatton up there. He just moved up there from here.
Okay, I will.
You got Jake's up there now too.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard that maybe on Links Pass or
this place near Kemmerer.
right.
All right. Who else? Am I going to have to start plugging products?
Well, let me do if you're going to do that, let me do my ending here.
Okay.
But again, remember, this is another tool. And don't be intimidated by it as an instructor, because I've done about 20 of these now. And I am shocked that people that I thought would have been horrible at this actually turned out to be pretty good. And I've come to the conclusion that when people are motivated, which most people are in an Avalanche class, they're actually pretty good at this human stuff. And so don't be afraid to, you know, throw this out there. Now, I know there is a thing like if you look at the curriculum, this isn't really part of the AAA or ARI or AAI's Rescue Fundamentals curriculum. I usually do this if I get a good group, I'll run them through the traditional curriculum, and then this is like a add-on bonus, which most of the schools allow. But also do custom courses where we'll focus on this. But yeah, don't be afraid to challenge people with this. And what I've found is people love this. They love to be challenged, and most people are pretty good at meeting the challenge, which is very rewarding to people. I've honestly never had more student satisfaction than after just torturing them for an afternoon with various multiple skills and have them everybody takes turn leading. I usually like try to get everybody to lead twice. And I've just been shocked at how competent they get at a near pro level after a hard half day of this, and how well they take to it. Granted, it's going to be a perishable skill, and I coach them on that as well. But yeah, don't be afraid to challenge people with this.
Now, if it's a big scenario and you've got a lot of wind, or it's snowing, or maybe there's some rollovers involved that kind of prevent good visual or voice contact, then of course, sure, it's nice to have radios.
Yeah, and the links. The links, I'm an old VHF guy, like probably most patrollers, anybody here. We're out well used VHF, but I have to admit, I've been using the link a lot more lately. And it is a quality, it's got good comms. It's got good range. And more importantly, it's got clear comms. So many of those FRS and GMRS radios have such crap speakers and microphones. They're almost unusable. Whereas the link truly is a good field tool. And I'm not saying that because I'm an ambassador, because as Edge knows, I don't back anything if I don't believe in it. But yeah, the link or the concept of having effective comms is definitely valid.
Oh, looks like we have a question from Kelly Rorick, but I couldn't read it. It went away. Maybe Emma can read it.
I can read it. Kelly asks, what is the range on the newer links?
You know, it's range is it's a tough one to define because it's so variable depending on the terrain and the obstacles. You know, the range on all these FRS radios is generally about the same because we're all limited at 2 watts transmit power. The quality sometimes will affect kind of the quality of the signal that you get right on the fringes, but you know, I would say the range is what we say, I think, is up to 35 miles line of sight. Generally speaking, you know, if you're not on the same side of a ridge, some trees, like 6 miles. And but it's so variable, we don't even like to put it in writing. And it drives us nuts when other people do. And that's the only reason we do it, is because people ask for it. But
well, let's drop back and think what it's designed for. It's designed for inter-party communications. It's not meant to manage a heli ski operation where, you know, the base and the guides are all 4 to 10 miles apart. It's not designed for that, although on certain days it could work for that. But for what it's designed for, it's more than good enough. I mean, mostly you're talking about being on the same slope. Maybe you're trying to get comms to your party that is over the ridge in the next drainage. It should work fine for that. So I think it's a good tool for what its intended use is.
yeah, I mean, a good example is last year down in Telluride, Ophir, that incident down there where the snowboarder broke, I think it was both femurs, and they were able to speak to, they were able to get like 30 miles out on that thing. And there was another case in Telluride also, a lot of action in Telluride because they have this radio program where they have common radio channels set up for each drainage. But anyways, people are using those radios down there. And there was one case where they were able to get in touch with somebody at a hut that was like 30 miles away because they were kind of on the top of a ridge and the hut was on this side of the opposite valley. And so, I mean, they can work, you know, that well. But I would say the difference in range between the Link 1.0 and the Link 2.0 is negligible, you know, maybe 10% more, even though we have twice the power. What else? And yeah, we have had some breakage on the Link 2.0s on the little hook that connects the mic to the base unit. We just have re-engineered that a little bit, and our latest batch this season has a different material and a slightly different design. So we're thinking that's probably going to solve that problem if you've seen that. Hey, maybe I'll show you one of our shovels. Another one of our shovels. While you guys are working up some more questions.
I did pit test that shovel. It does sometimes that's what you worry about on shovels. Can I make a nice clean pit face? And it's got enough good flat on it. Works actually really well for that. So.
And then
Good, yeah.
we do have another person with their hand raised.
Okay.
Okay.
For it.
All
Sorry,
right. Oh, go ahead.
It's Gary again. You're short on time. You only have to teach one system, a microgrid or 3 circles. Which do you teach? And do certain beacons do a better microgrid? And do certain beacons do a better 3 circles?
Well, I'll speak first, but Sarge probably has a more complete answer. I don't really teach 3-circle method anymore because you end up walking around a little bit more and you end up kind of walking uphill of the center of the circle, which a lot of people don't like to do. And it's a little bit redundant with the search path you probably took into that area in the first place. And if it's really steep, gnarly debris, then it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you could riff on that and do 3 semicircles. But I have found micro search strips to be super effective, but only if you do it the Canadian way, which they call the Simplified micro search strip method, where you basically search strip the whole scenario. You don't try to figure out, you know, do I have multiple burials within 10 meters? Do I have multiple burials within 3 meters? That's way too much for most people to handle. So I would say in a big scenario, maybe the 3-circle method is a good technique to use because you're only doing those 3 circles and no more. And in a small scenario, I think the micro search strip method is better because it's too complicated to learn how to do it sector by sector, but it's really simple to just search strip the whole thing. And really the only place you're going to be doing this is in a guiding exam, and those are small scenarios. So pretty much everybody I know is doing micro search strips.
And my perspective on that is A, we don't have a lot of time on these classes to get too deep into that. So I'm usually doing a demo on that. And what I like about teaching the micro search strip as opposed to 3-circle is I can, especially to say beginners or novices, I can just tell them like, look, if it just all gets too confusing, just micro search strip the whole damn thing. And you will find it every time, provided you know how to use, you know, like with the BCA, you don't got to worry about it. It's a signal strength based beacon. Anybody else, if they have one with the marking, they need to know how to go, like in the memo, you have to go into pro mode and change some settings and all that. Gets a little more complicated, but I'll be honest, what I do a lot with people is I'll put some beacons on the surface, like 3 beacons on the surface, and I'll have the people walk a micro search strip, even though they can see them, just so they can get a idea what it feels like and what it looks like to do a micro search strip and what the resulting signal is going to look like. I really think, and I guess I'll get on my soapbox now. I think AAA and all the schools, I'm lobbying right now for an advanced rescue class. Because if you look at the curriculum for the class we have now, it's pretty limited. We're trying to get people competent in single beacon, single rescue, single rescue, or single victim, maybe 2 victims. We're not getting too deep in advanced skills because of time. I think we need an advanced rescue class. BCA and I might pull together and do something outside of the AAA thing right now that we deal with this. But I think if we had an advanced rescue class, we'd have more time to get into things like micro search strip and 3-circle method, and then really spend the bulk of the time on group search methods where we teach people to lead and manage a team.
Great, thanks. Do certain beacons?
One thing I really like to do is just put 2 beacons on the ground transmitting and just walk from one to the other, just so people can see what it's like to ignore the one you've already found, and then to see the other one come on the screen, and then to lock onto that next one, and for the other one to go away, and for the numbers to go down on the second one, just to see that process as you go from one transmitter to the other, I think is a great fundamental skill. And I'll always have people go through that before they try any kind of button pushing for marking or big picture or any of that. Just show them what it's like, just based on signal strength, to walk from one victim towards another victim.
I mean, the challenge as instructors, though, is if you're going to teach those methods, I think you need to know how all the various beacons work. And the information's out there. Usually it's in the owner's manual of all of them. So I've got those on file. But I need to be able to take a Mammut guy and go, okay, here, you need to go into pro mode. You need to push this button. You need to push this button. Okay, now you can do a signal strength search. Same thing with the PEEPS, BD system. I'm not sure on the ARVA. I think are they the same edge, or are they signal strength?
You can do a signal strength search with all these beacons.
Yeah, but the difference is the other beacons you have to go through a menu and do some settings, which isn't necessarily intuitive out in the field. Like if you're going to teach that, I think the instructor needs to know that. That's not insurmountable. I mean, there's 4 or 5 different beacon manufacturers. You can know all that, but I think if you're going to teach micro search strip or 3-circle method as an instructor, you kind of need to know how to manipulate everybody's beacon to show them how to get into it, and then remind them that they're probably going to forget it in a week. That they need a plan, to retain that information if they're going to ever have to use it.
Good, thanks.
Awesome. Bruce, did you want to talk about shovels before we wrap it up?
Sure, yeah. Just go show you a couple more. We have a D handle shovel this year. You'll see. In the past, our D handle shovel has been huge. The B52, that was our old one. This is called the D2. D stands for D grip, 2 stands for size 2 blade. We have 3 sizes, 1, 2, and 3. We have a size 2 blade, D grip, the D2. And then this is I would say our granddaddy of the line. This is our 2H. So size 2 blade. And the H stands for hoe mode. So kind of like our old dozer shovel. It's got a hoe on it, so you can hoe away like that. Notice how all of our buttons are self-activating. You don't need to push buttons anymore. You just shove them in place and they activate themselves. One thing about hoeing, it seems like a lot of people kind of think that it makes for more efficient avalanche rescue shoveling. It's really more for softer snow or hard snow that's already been chopped up. It's actually really hard to dig hard snow and debris with a hoe shovel, because in order to chop the snow up, you have to swing the hoe really hard. And that's how you hurt the other people that you're shoveling with, right? Or the victim if he's buried shallow. So really the best way to chop snow is to stomp on the blade of the shovel like a gardening spade if it's hard debris. I mean, generally speaking, in a companion rescue, the debris isn't necessarily rock hard. But the deeper you get, the more dense and set up it's going to be. So that's when you have to probably start stomping on the blade. So really the hoe mode is for the people in the back of the line that are hoeing the chunks of snow out of the hole. If you got a chain gang going, if you're strategically shoveling, or if you're digging a snow pit and you just want to move a ton of snow so you can get that column isolated, or if you own a snowmobile and you get stuck a lot.
Or if you're an instructor and you're hiding beacons, I mean, some days I think I'm just a professional beacon hider.
Yeah.
That hoe works great for that. You can be in your verts or your skins, and you can dig a 2.5 foot deep hole, 3 foot deep hole in hoe mode completely, and do that over and over and over again all day. Especially when you're doing these group rescue classes, you bury a lot of beacons.
Yeah. All right, these are our poles, our scepter poles, which are friggin' awesome. We have a releasable strap now, and we have our scraper grip, which is super handy when your skins ice up or your top sheets get all glopped up with really heavy snow in the Pacific Northwest and you're carrying 10 extra pounds on each ski. You can just scrape as you go. And then we have this tool here with this nice piece of friction padding here for moving your heel levers and your boot levers up and down and pulling up on your tech toes. And even the basket is designed, see that shape? That's actually designed to get around the housing on your heel piece so you can get to your climbing, your heel risers and stuff. So this pole was designed for me personally, and you're welcome to buy it.
That looks awesome, Edge.
Yeah, but you're a snowboarder.
Oh, so snowboarders can't have that pole?
We have a split version of 4-section pole with all those features. So, but they're sold out. Actually, a lot of our stuff is sold out. If anybody wants to do pro deals, just go to our website, backcountryaccess.com/pro, and you can apply, or send me an email and I'll send you a code on the sly, on the down low.
Awesome. It looks like Kelly dropped another note in. And so Kelly, I'm gonna drop Edge's email here. And I'll shoot this over as well so the two of you can connect. It sounds like she'd love to have you guys stop by.
Where is Paragon located?
In Edwards, Colorado, right, Kelly?
Oh, okay. That's you, Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
cool.
I'll send this over as well. Oh, Vail area. Yeah. So here is Edge's email. And then I'm happy to connect the two of you as well after this. So great. Before I let everyone go, I am just going to share my screen one more time so that you can see some of the other webinars that we have coming up. Oh, and of course I've lost my slides. Isn't that always how it goes? Okay. Okay. So we have a couple other webinars coming up this season with a couple other manufacturers as well. So you can hear some of their details and compare and contrast on your own. And then we'll also have area instructor and A3 board member Jonathan Sheffs will be talking a little bit about comparing some of the beacons and talking a little bit about how human error makes beacon searching imperfect. So a lot of the same themes that we have throughout this season. I'm also going to just
That dude's a genius.
Yes, he is. Yeah. And I think Jonathan may actually be on the call right now. So
Oh, good. Okay.
yeah. So he's not a plant, Jonathan, I swear. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat as well. You all obviously have been there because you registered for this webinar, but if you need that again. And then of course, you all know how to get a hold of me, emma.walker@avtraining.org. Always happy to answer questions and hear about webinars that you all want to see and that sort of thing. So Edge and Sarge, thank you both so much. We really appreciate having you here. This was awesome. And folks who are on the call, I will post a recording of this webinar. It'll take a little while to download to my desktop. So it'll probably be tomorrow or Monday by the time I get it up, but I'll send that over to folks as well. And that will be shared with all area instructors. So thank you all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, Emma, and all the
Thank
other
you, Emma.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Good night.